Hey, welcome to our shop again. Today what we're going to do is we're going to show you how we're going to build some plantation shutters. These shutters are very, very expensive to buy. I know when I was building cabinets, I didn't make them back then, but they were very expensive. And fact is, I know for a fact that I was doing some research. A regular raised panel door runs you around anywhere between $20 and $25, sometimes $30. $25 a square foot to purchase ready-made raised panel doors. Well, ready-made shutters here, unfinished, I've been looking, and they can approach $45, $50 a square foot. So they're almost twice as expensive to make as raised panel doors. And they're a lot easier to make. They're a little time-consuming making the louvers and everything, but we have our new window shutter set to do that. Okay, so what we're going to do is first we're going to show you how we're going to lay out the stiles and the rails to accept these louvers. So we're going to get started. Okay, here's our stile and rails here. Here's our two stiles and here's our two rails. Just like making a raised panel door, our stiles are 2.5 inches wide. But on a shutter, we're going to make our top rail 5 inches and our bottom rail 7 inches to start with anyway. Okay. Now, remember when we did the raised panel doors, they engage a 1/2 inch on each side? Well, we're going to tongue and groove this rail a 1/2 inch into here and a 1/2 inch into here. So remember, 2.5, 2.5, we're going to lose only a 1/2 inch here and a 1/2 inch there. So if we're making our shutters 16 inches, subtract 4, our rails are 12 inches. All right, so we've got all the pieces cut to the correct size. What we're ready to do is we're ready to start laying out where our louvers go. And the louvers we have here, we have two different sizes you can use with our set here, a 2.5 inch wide or a 3.5 inch wide. We're going to use a 2.5 inch wide for this smaller shutter. So if our louver is 2.5 inches, we don't want that thing to come right flush to the top. We're going to have it overlap a 1/4 inch. Okay? So first thing I've done, you can see I drew a line where our 5 inches goes for our top rail. Now, if that louver is going to set there, if this is 2.5, we would come down half of that, which is 1 1/4. But we want it to overlap a 1/4, so we're going to come down 1 inch. And that's where our first louver is going to go, 1 inch away from the rail. Okay? So I just put a little mark right there. Right there is where the hole is going to be drilled, where this louver will pivot on. Okay, now, the next one, all the rest of the remaining ones, since these are 2.5 inches and we're going to overlap them 1/4 inch, we're going to go every 2 1/4 inches. Every 2 1/4, because these are 2.5, so we're going to come down here and put a mark every 2 1/4 inches. So I'll stretch my tape out here, and I'll lay out 2 1/4 inches right there. Okay, I'm going to continue doing this, and I'll come back. I'm going to continue laying out all these going down to my bottom rail here, 2 1/4 inches apart. All right, we're drawing our last position for our last louver. Remember what I started? We started here, 5 inches for our top rail, 1 inch away, louver. Every 2 1/4 inches, we're putting a louver, because they're going to overhang a 1/4. Okay, when we get down to here, this is the position right here. This mark is the position of our 7 inch bottom rail, but we're 1 inch away. So if we put a louver in here, we want that to overhang a 1/2 inch. It's not gonna. It's almost going to hit. We come out just perfect. We might have a little gap there. So what we have to do then is you're going to have to reposition or recut your bottom rail always, probably. You're never going to come out perfect. So what we're going to do is we're going to have to stick another louver in here, come down here 2 1/4 inches, stick another louver, and we're going to have to cut this rail down. Okay? And if it gets smaller than the top rail, then this becomes the top rail instead of this becomes the bottom one. But we'll see where we're going to come out here. All right, so we're going to come down here. We're going to go another 2 1/4 inches, put another louver in, because right there's going to be our last louver. So this line here, I'm going to get rid of that. See, that's no good. That's where this was. Now, from our last louver to the start of our rail, remember what it said? 1 inch. That's what we want, 1 inch right there. So right there. We're going to come down here 1 inch. And that's where our rail is going to go. So now we're going to call our bottom rail is going to be coming out at 5 inches. So luckily, just by happenstance, we just come out where our top rail is 5 inches and our bottom rail is 5 inches. That's not going to happen very often. But you can see how you have to accommodate. That's why we make this bigger. We can always come and make it shorter. But ours just happened to come out 5 and 5. Okay, so now what I'm going to do next is take my other style. I'm going to clamp these together, mark these off, and transfer my lines onto both styles. Okay, we've got all the lines drawn where all our holes have to be drawn. The outside ones are where our rails are lined up. Okay? So the next thing we're ready to do is we're ready to come in here and drill the holes where our pivot points are going to be for our Louver. But before we do that, on the edges, on the inside edges of our styles, what we need to do is we need to cut this bead. We're going to use this beading bit out of our set right here, and we're going to cut this little bead that comes down the edge of the style right there. We'll do that next. Okay, we're going to take our beading bit out of our set right here, and we're going to stick it into the router, snug it up. Okay. Okay, we want that bottom of that carbide almost flush with the top of the table so we get a full bead there. Okay, so we're ready to cut the beads into our styles. And we want to cut the bead on the inside edge and on the outside that shows. And you can see right here I put an X on the outside of our styles and rails. All the rails are marked with an X, so simulating the outside. So we're going to put that next to the fence and run it through. So we'll bring our fence over, drops into our pivot here, and we're going to line up the fence so it's flush with the bearing. And we're going to cut our 2 beads on our 2 styles. Okay, we have both beads cut now. Now we're going to put our rails in here and create the tongue and grooves on the rails and the styles to put the whole frame together. Okay, we got our tongue and groove set here. First thing we're going to do is we're going to take the groove cutter out, and I'm going to cut the grooves right on the inside of my styles here to accept the rails. Now, you can see we want to put that groove. Here's where our rail ends. We want to put that groove back here a ways, but we don't have 3/4 of an inch to work anymore because that pattern, that beading pattern that comes down here, we only have about 5/8 of an inch to center that groove. So we're going to put that groove into our router bit, approximately centered. It's approximately centered with that 5/8 of an inch that we have left over. Okay, we put our insert ring in. And we're ready to start. And remember, we always put the good side down. There's our X. We're going to put the good side down, and we're going to cut that groove. Okay? Again, we want to pivot our fence flush with our bearing. Okay, now, when we cut that groove, we're going to cut a groove for the top rail, then we'll come down here and cut a groove for the bottom rail. When we cut that groove, what I want to do, that groove is going to go, our rail is going to go to here, but we want to come back about 1/2 inch because I don't want that groove to interfere, you'll see later, with the rabbet on our rail that accepts the louver. So let's come back about 1/2 inch and put a mark there. On this rail, there's our bottom rail right there. We're going to come back about 1/2 inch right there on both of our styles, and we're going to come in here now and we're going to cut those 2 grooves. Okay, we got our grooves cut, and you can see we cut our grooves just almost touching our pattern. We could have put that groove a little bit lower, but we're going to be fine because we still have a flat edge right here. Okay, next thing we're going to do now is we're going to take this bit out of here. Okay, this is how we do it. Remember? Some of my old customers could probably be doing this, showing how to do this for me right now. They've done so many tongue and groove work. But we're going to take the groove cutter out, and our tongue cutter is the same height. Drop it on our rubber grommet, as you can see in our previous videos. Now you can see we're automatically already set up to take our two rails now and put the good side down, and we're going to cut the two tongues, and automatically they're going to end up being flush with our two styles. So we're going to get this set up, and we'll do that right now. Okay, now this is our one rail, but remember it's 7 inches. We got to cut it off 5 inches. So let's go over. I'm going to go over the table saw and cut this off so it's 5 inches, so we come out to the right dimension. Okay, we have our two tongues cut now, on all 4 tongues actually. And remember, there's our X, our good side. Here's our good side here. We'll slide that in there, our tongue and groove together. I got it just a little bit snug, but that's okay. But we're going to come down here, and you can see we're flush on the outside here. And we can't go all the way in here because we have to take this flush trim bit here, right here next. We have to eliminate some of our tongue so that when that goes into our groove, everything's going to come together nice and tight. So we're going to put our flush trim bit into our router next, and we're going to get rid of some of that tongue so we can put these together. Okay, you can see we took that flush trim bit and got rid of a little bit of that tongue. So now, when we go to put our stiles and rails together, you can see the back, of course, we're fitting tight in here now, up in here, because we got rid of that tongue, and we're nice and flush there. But on this side, you can see a little shadow in there where that stock is just hanging in the air. So what we do there is we take it over to the table saw, and what I'm going to do is cut a slight chamfer, a 45-degree angle going from here down to the top of that bead. So we'll set up on the table saw and do that next. Okay, you can see where we put a small little chamfer mark. We got our blade set at a 45 like I did earlier. We're going to cut that. Our blade's not going to interfere with our tongue, and we're going to make that cut. And you want to get it set just perfect. Make a bunch of trial cuts so it's setting perfect with the bottom of that bead. You'll see it right here. Okay, we got that chamfer cut, and you can see there now that chamfer comes right to the bottom of the bead. Okay, we got another rail in here. All we got to do is put our other stile into there, and we got our frame built. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to come into here and we're going to drill holes to accept all of our louver pins. Okay, we got a 1/4-inch drill bit in our drill press now. We're going to drill the holes where all our louver pins go. And our louver pin, this is what it looks like here. It's a little tapered on this side and a 1/4-inch to receive into the stock here. When you center this with your fence now, you want to center it between the bottom of the board and the start of the profile, remember, okay? So we're going to come into here. Now this is where, we're not going to drill a hole there because that's where our rail goes, but we're going to come into here, line it up, and start drilling our holes. Now I got to stop right there. I'm going to stop I got to stop so that I'm not drilling maybe just a little bit past this distance right here. Okay? Okay, we've got all the pins drilled in both of our styles. Now we're ready to take it back to our workbench and insert all of our pins here. Okay, we've got all our pins in both styles, right here and right here. And next thing we're ready to do is put our louvers in. So what we got to do next is prepare all of our stock to start cutting the tapers edges on our louvers. So we'll show you how we do that next. Okay, we're ready to start cutting our louvers like this now. We're starting to start machining them. And out of our set, we pulled our 2.5-inch cutter. And you can see where the cutter comes in here and it radiuses off. You want to get as close to the bottom of that radius as you can. And I got it already set up, ready to go to make our first cuts here. Okay, snugged up there. Put our insert ring in. And this bit also, you can see, has a bearing on it. So we're just going to bring our fence flush with that bearing. There's our bearing. Bring our fence flush with the bearing, and we're ready to cut. Now, what I did, we need approximately 11 inches here, but I cut something out a little bit longer. You can see I'm going to get 1, 2, 3 of them out here easy. I'll make a longer piece, but we're going to bring that in there, and what you want to do is plane this material down to 3/8 of an inch thick, 3/8 of an inch. Okay, and I got our feather board here. Actually, it's a feather guard. It also guards and also acts like a feather board. So we're going to put some good pressure on there, tighten that down, and we know we're going to get a good pressure against that fence. All right, so we'll come in here and we're going to cut all 4 sides. It lifted up right here, so we're going to run through again. Okay, move. Okay, you can see we got our stock tapered on all 4 edges. Okay, now we'll head over to our stile and rail and see how it fits. Okay, we've got all of our louver material all machined. Now, next thing we want to do is figure out the distance between our stiles, which is 11 inches. Remember, this was 12. We got a 1/2-inch tongue groove buried, so we're 11 inches. So we're going to cut all our stock into pieces, not 11 inches, but we're going to go 1/8 inch shy, because our little plastic pins here have a little bit of an edge on each side, a little bit of a nip. So we're going to go 1/8 inch shy of 11 inches. So we got all those machined to that now, cut off to there. Next thing we have to do is we have to drill holes in the center, a 5/32 inch hole in the center. Okay, to find the center, what I always do is all of these are 2.5 inches. Well, I'm going to cut a piece that's just a little bit shy of 2.5, 1.25. So if I just hold these right here, I'm going to locate the center on both sides of all my louvers right there. Just line them up right there. You can line them up on a better square if you want. This is good enough for us right here. Now we're going to take this over to our drill press and drill a 5/32 inch hole in the center of these, and we want to drill that hole deep enough to receive all of our pin there. Maybe just go a little bit deeper. And I have drilled these by hand with a hand drill. You can set them up on the drill press. You can do it however you want. Just drill them holes because they're going to work no matter how you do them, a drill press or drill them by hand. Okay, we got all our holes drilled on both sides of all of our louvers here. And you just want to make sure you drill deep enough that pin drops all the way in there flush. So you got play. Okay, now you can do this on the drill press, or you can do it by hand, doesn't make any difference. So either way you want to do it. All right, the next thing we want to do is we want to find the center of the louver this way, because when these louvers go into here, we're going to have an arm here to operate this. So what we have to do is we have to drill a small hole in the center to put a little bit of a eyelet in there, and we're going to show you how to do that next.